Hey, Jake. You can talk, right?
Are we really like the first ones here after all? Oh, no, they're okay. I'm like, I was rushing so much at the end of my lecture. Hi, Emily. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. They're really fast at switching from one Zoom to the other.
So we're still waiting for the other groups.
Yeah. Look, there's only one person here that I Yeah, I think it's
Hi.
just hi, Cameron. Yep, so far it's just my section. As
I just
everyone
had
else
one
ran.
question.
Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
I just had a super quick question about the presentation that you were just doing.
Yeah.
Where can I find that presentation?
If you go to our box folder, there's a folder that's 00 lectures.
Okay.
And so in any of the PDFs of all of these lectures are in there.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. How are you doing, Emily?
Pretty good. Ready to present, excited.
Yeah. Whoop, whoop.
Hope you're all excited to learn Photoshop.
They are. Whew, I'm ready to sit down.
Well, I've been sitting all day, so I had to go take a walk.
Oh, that's good. Are you? You're here, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any in-person classes?
I was supposed to, but I'm in Marcus's studio and he's still in Korea. So
Oh, yeah.
the only
Yeah,
one.
he's traveling back soon. I don't know if he'll be able to come to campus, but he's coming back soon.
Mm-hmm. He seems to think like he could have in-person meetings with us later.
Oh, cool. I wonder if I should remind my colleagues. I know. I mean, you sent the link the other day.
Hopefully they're coming.
Yeah. I can email them while they're hanging out. Although, if they're not paying attention enough to have sent people, I don't know if they're checking their email. What's the site for Marcus's studio?
Like a website?
No. What's the physical site?
We don't really have a physical site. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, so we're just basically like building something or like exploring material processes and not so much like a building on a site.
Mm-hmm.
It's very open-ended.
Anyone coming to Beehive?
Wait, my roommate is in a different section and they're still doing like desk crits on Zoom right now.
Guys, I didn't give you time for a restroom break. If you want to jump and go to the restroom, be back. It's 4:37. Just be back by, 4:42.
It says in the chat that section 2 wasn't given information about the meetings.
Well, I just reminded everyone. There's a lot of logistics these days.
It's always a challenge when it's Zoom.
Yeah. What are your other courses right now?
I'm doing like thesis research course and a professional practice by Daniel. That's about it.
And Yasmin's doing the the thesis prep. Is that right?
Yasmin, Denise, and Darla.
Oh wow, you got the whole team.
Yeah. Got a lot of information.
Yeah, it's a powerhouse.
A lot of wise opinions and advice.
It's like all three generations of Steckman women faculty.
Yes, it's fun though. They have a lot of interesting things to say.
Yeah.
Makes you think.
Yeah, and quite a bit of contrast to Dan and Marcus. It's an interesting. You got everybody.
Yeah, Marcus was looking at my draft of my presentation that's happening tomorrow, and he said it looks like I'm doing a thesis project, and I'm like, I'm doing 2 theses now.
Somehow that doesn't surprise me entirely.
I try to do that.
We have at least 2 sections here. Emma, what section are you in?
I'm in section 4. We just finished class.
Okay, cool. So Callspeak and Matthew, that's what we're missing. Well, I would say, I told these guys they could run to the restroom. So I would say at 4:42, I would just get going. And then if sections 1 and 2 join us, so be it.
Okay. Well, they might just miss a little Lightroom because that's going to be brief, but.
Cool. Mhm. Who's in your studio?
I don't know all of them because a lot of them are 4th years.
Mm-hmm.
Like 4 others who are in my class.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest are 4th years. It's all different this year. Everything's mixed around.
Yeah. Are you with some of your buds like Chris or anybody in there?
Well, I'm with Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Here, he's part of Beehive. He's in the process of being part of Beehive, so he's super structured.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, he's in the same.
I see. He's hiding down there. I see him.
Yeah, I thought that's what you meant when you said there's only one person who wasn't in your section. I was like,
Yeah. No, it took me a second. I was like, wait a minute. I know who that is. Alrighty, 4:41. So we're gonna start in 1 minute, guys.
Everybody's back from their bathroom break.
Right. Some creature comforts. What you got there, Cameron? Are you laser cutting? No, you're gluing sticks together. I got it.
No, this is actually I cut this out, but I was just starting on my model. But half of it I didn't know the tip about cutting 3 times, so it's kind of jagged. But yeah.
It happens. Sometimes first models are a little rough here and there.
I remember I made one of my first models out of masking tape. So, right.
Which project was that for? For the precedent?
Yeah, it was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is like a bunch of shapes, basically.
Mm-hmm. That is crazy. Did Vernell do that to you? That was your.
I think that was James.
Was that James?
Yeah. Well, no, wait, that might have been one Vernell's. It was both. They were working together, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying, cause your year was so funky, right? There was only one project we didn't do together, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you were stuck with me.
My year's the weird year. Like they keep trying to change things, and it like just so happens that we're the year that's like switching on.
That's true.
Yeah, it's happened a few times now, but we're the weird ones.
All right. Well, yeah, take it away. Get rolling, guys. You have met. Did they meet you last time?
No, I think it's just James.
It's just James. Cool. Well, I'm going to hand you guys over to Emily, who's both one of our mentors and a Beehive tutor as well. So I'm gonna sign.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I am similar to James. I am like Sean's assistant. Sean's the director of Beehive. So welcome to the Photoshop Lightroom lecture. So I'll start by sharing my screen. Everybody can hear me all right? Thumbs up. Yeah, good. Cool. Okay. So we're going to start off with we're going to start off with how you actually download these programs to your computer. So some of you may have already done this, but just to go over this, if you type in the address adobe.psu.edu, that will take you to the Penn State Adobe sign up, and you just click this button, sign up for free. So you'll get Creative Cloud. That'll allow you to download pretty much any of those Adobe programs that are offered in that program onto your computer, and then you can use it for, I think as long as you're a student, you will be able to just sign in with your Penn State ID, and you will not have to be charged for that. So that's really nice. Now we're going to start off with some Lightroom. So Photoshop and Lightroom are very similar. So we're just going to go over Lightroom kind of briefly, because I think Photoshop is more commonly used, at least based on like the people I've talked to in this building. I think most of us use Photoshop, but Lightroom is also helpful, and it has a bit of a simpler layout for when you're just beginning. If you just want to quickly touch up a photo, sometimes Lightroom will be better for that. So this is what the screen looks like initially when you open up the program. You have these navigation toolbars over here. So essentially, Lightroom has a built-in file explorer. I use Windows, so if you have Mac, bear with me here. But so basically, all of your files that you import into this program are stored here. So it's almost like a second file explorer for just your photos that you're trying to edit. So that's why it's really helpful to like have some kind of organization of these photos on your computer. So then that way, when you go up to File and click Import Photos and Video, it'll all be laid out for you when that pops up. So here we go. So you can see all the folders that are on my computer on my desktop right here. I'm going to click Beehive. And that's going to pull up the photos that I put together to show you guys today. So I'm just going to unclick that one because that was the final edited draft and we don't need to edit that in Lightroom. So these three, the checked off ones, we're going to import down here in the bottom right. And then that will show up in our navigator over here. If you click on one, it gives you a little preview. Like I said before, with the file management, now you can go in here under folders and click the drop down here for Beehive. And it should show you, well, maybe it doesn't, but it might be because it's already on my screen. But it will show you that there's 3 photos here, and then these are the 3 photos that you just imported. So we're going to start with a site photo. If this lovely Italian vista was your site. So right now we're in library mode, how it has these panels over here. We're going to switch over to develop mode. These are the main 2 that you're going to want to use. Since this is just an intro, a very quick Lightroom intro, we're just going to stick with these 2. So if you click on develop, that will take you to the editing portion of Lightroom. And as you can see, our photo is right here, the one that I had clicked on in library mode. So what you're going to want to use most often in Lightroom is this sidebar over here on the right side. So this is essentially, it has a lot of similar functions to like different filters and things you can apply in Photoshop, but it's a lot more easily laid out for you. And all you have to do is move these bars one way or another until you like the way your photo looks. And a lot of Lightroom, you can save it as a new photo, or if you have it saved in Lightroom, then you can change your edits and you can alter the photo so it's not permanently edited. If you decide, hey, maybe I made the contrast too high on this and like I don't really like how it looks now, but you saved it, you can typically go back and edit it if you open it up in Lightroom. So that's really helpful. Something that Photoshop doesn't really do. So for example, I think the exposure on this picture is pretty good. That's just gonna create more white space or dark space depending on where you move the bar. So we're just gonna leave that here. Contrast, it could be a little sharper. So let's just put that at like plus 12, not too much. I don't think we need to mess with the highlights and shadows too much on this one. And then you have texture, clarity, and dehaze. So I think this one could use a little dehazing because as you can see, the mountain range in the background, pretty hazy. So that's just gonna clear up some of that and make it pop a little bit, as well as with the sky too. And to me right now, that's looking a little oversaturated. So I'm gonna turn the saturation down a little. And vibrance is very similar to saturation. That's, I think, more to do with the intensity of the individual colors. Pretty much the same thing. So you can lower both of those if you think it's too colorful, and hopefully it'll get you where you want it to be. So I think that did pretty well for it. Now you can more clearly see the mountains. There's also different tabs in here for different customizations you can do to get a little more detailed with it. Typically, like a lot of photographers will use Lightroom. So if you don't have like a fancy camera, like that's fine too. You'll mostly be sticking to like this top bar with the basic controls. So you can see like that's pretty simply laid out for you. So that is what I'm going to do to that photo. Now I'm going to show you a different one. So we're going to go back to library mode, and then that will have saved, I believe, on its own. As you can see, and we can go back to this one. This another photo I took while I was in Italy. We'll go to develop mode again. And you can see that here. So this one we're going to bring into Photoshop. So Lightroom and Photoshop are very compatible. They work very well with each other. And you can do things like bring it in and then save it into Photoshop and bring it back into Lightroom and still be able to change some things. So that's pretty neat. Not very common with Adobe features. A lot of the times you edit it in one program and then it's saved like that and you can't really change it in the other. So I'm not really going to mess around with any of this stuff so much, but we are going to, one moment. We are going to go to the photo toolbar up here and click edit in and edit in Adobe Photoshop. So this is how you can transfer something over. Typically, you will want to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. These other options, we're not really going to go over those because the first one is going to be the one you most likely use. And that keeps it most compatible between going back and forth between programs. So give it a moment, that will open in Photoshop. All right, so here it is. If you don't already know, this is the way Photoshop looks when it's opened up. I will also show you how to open a file directly into Photoshop. So some of the things that Photoshop can do, one really good thing about Photoshop Lightroom doesn't do is the layers. So if you look at the panel on the right, that is where the layers are going to be displayed right here. So right now we just have a background layer, which is the original photo, and that is locked currently. So what I like to do to enable myself to work backwards if I need to is just to duplicate this original file and keep it as a background layer that's locked. And that way, if you mess something up and you happen to do something that you can't really reverse, you still have that original photo that is in the back layer. So you're just gonna right click on this one and click duplicate layer. And yeah, we'll just call that background copy, that's fine. So you see that one's unlocked and that one will be the one that we'll be editing. And you can click this eye icon right here and that'll just hide the one that you locked. So that's like a safeguard. If you mess something up later, you can always hide this one, which leaves a transparent background, turn this one back on, and then you've got your original photo. So another thing you can do with the layers panel, you can make groups. So there's this little folder icon down here. If you open this up, you can drag layers into it. Say like, this isn't particularly useful for editing site photos, I would say, but if you're ever like making a collage or something and you have one group full of just trees that you're dragging in and another one full of like, I don't know, like furniture or like people or something that you're putting into the collage, you can sort them in the groups and then right click and go to, there should be a rename here. I think if you double click, there we go, double click, and you can rename it, like let's say trees or something, and that'll be what's in your collage. So that's just one way to help you organize a little bit. So we're just gonna pull this one out of this group and then delete the group with the little trash can icon down here. Does anybody have any questions so far? Is this clear? Am I going too fast? Good.
I had a question. How did you get the group to show up again, like initially?
So you go to this little folder icon down here and see it says under my mouse, create a new group, and you click that and you're all set. Then you can just drag the layers into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So I'm just going to delete that again. All right. So one more thing that you can do with layers, I'm just going to make a new layer, which is down here next to the trash can, create new layer. And we're going to find the paintbrush tool, and I'll go over these tools with you later. So I'm just going to make a stroke here. Oh boy, big red S. So if for some reason you wanted a big red S on your site photos, which you probably don't, but let's say you wanted to like highlight something and you're selecting things or you're making a little sketch and you don't want it to be quite as bright and obnoxious as this red S, you can change the opacity of it over here. So basically that lets you see, you can barely see it now, so you can like highlight things a lot easier like that. You also don't have to use the paintbrush for highlighting. We will get into that later. But so that's the opacity function over there. I'm just going to turn that layer off. And that's another thing with layers. Like if you're not sure whether what you're doing is going to affect the original image or if you want to keep what you're doing, if you're just kind of playing around, when in doubt, make a new layer and then you can always turn it off or delete it later. Because if you edit on the original photo or like on top of the layer where you made other edits that you want to keep, it's going to be a lot harder to redo that in the future. So basically just keep making more layers even if you think you might not need a layer for each thing. Do keep in mind though that the more layers you have in your Photoshop file, the more the file size will be typically. Again, depending on like what you're importing, but you like if it's just paint strokes, that's not really going to matter. But layers do tend to bring up file size. So you don't have to create a layer for every single paint stroke, but they are very helpful for like different types of edits. So we're just going to turn that off. All right. Another thing that we can do over on the right side of the screen is add adjustment layers. So you can see now I already have my adjustments toolbar up and ready. And these are all the different layers you can add. You can also go on the top here to go image and adjustments. This is grayed out because we're on a layer that is not currently selected. So you have to select the layer you want to edit. And if I wanted to add an adjustment to this, I could, to this image, I could come up here and click any one of these adjustments. Let's say hue and saturation, and I want to make it black and white, so I'm going to bring the saturation all the way down. The only problem with this method is that if you click OK, this image is now black and white. And if you save the file and you don't undo, it is stuck like that. So we have our backup file, but it's always better to edit in layers rather than on top of the picture. So I'm just going to click Control Z, just going to undo that. Instead of going to image adjustments, you should always go to the adjustment bar here. You can pull that up by going to Window, the top here. If you don't see anything that I have on my screen right now, if you're following along on your own screen, or if you go to this later and you can't find anything, it'll probably be in Windows. You'll just have to sort through here and see like what you want to edit. And so this is called adjustments. You see it's checked off, so it'll show up over there. So we're going to add, let's see, where is the hue and saturation? And we're going to make this picture grayscale. So bring that all the way down. And now you can see that the hue and saturation showed up on the other layer. It is its own layer that applies to every layer beneath it. And you can easily just turn that off and the filter is gone. So it's still there when you need it. You can delete it at any point without affecting your original picture. All right. Now that we went over layers a bit, we're going to go over some of the other tools you can use. So just going down this panel, your panel might look a little different from mine. That is typically, if you go to Window and Workspace, sometimes you'll have a different workspace set up. Photoshop has these different like arrangements of the toolbars. And if you ever like, you can't find anything in your toolbar, it'll be down where these three little dots are. You can click, oh, not with your left, right click here, and then it'll open up whatever tools are not already displayed on your toolbar. So I typically have it set on the Essentials workspace, which is the default. So if you go down the toolbar here, the first one will be the Move command. Pretty simple. So we're going to click on the layer that has the photo on it, and then you can click and just drag your photo however you want. The canvas, which is the outer portion here, will stay the same. This does not move with the picture. So think of it as in like the picture is in a frame and you're moving the picture inside, but you're not moving the frame. Similar to InDesign, if any of you have explored that yet. So to edit the canvas in the background here, you can change that in image and canvas size, or you could also use the crop tool down here. This will allow you to extend your whole canvas, and it doesn't really touch individual layers so much as the entire canvas. So we're just going to put that back. Enter. Didn't really do anything, but okay. So that was the crop and move. The second tool on the list is the selection tool. So you're probably going to use this one a lot, as well as the one below it. It's another type of selection tool. So you can do rectangular, which, you know, pretty simple, just does a rectangle. And then if I click the move tool, I can move around that part of the picture. So you may want to do that when you're editing your drawings. Let's undo that with Control Z. If you need to make multiple undos, you can hold an Alt, I believe, and it will or shift, I'm sorry. Shift will do that. So I believe it's a little different on the Mac. Here we go. All right. And this selection tool, instead of doing the rectangle, it is more of a freeform tool. So you have the lasso tool, which you can just drag around whatever shape you want. One of the more useful ones, I would think, are the polygonal lasso, which you can use to like follow certain lines in a drawing, or better yet, the magnetic lasso, which kind of hooks onto what is already existing in your drawing. And that's really going to depend on like the contrast and how well it can pick things out. So not always the most reliable tool either. The best one for that is the magic wand tool right below. Oh, to deselect, easy shortcut is Control D. So that's what I've been using at this point. Right now it's giving me this symbol instead of my usual cursor. It's because we don't have a layer selected again. So just click back on here. So the magic wand tool, you can use that to select large groupings of certain colors, shades, or like it'll detect different things in a picture and select that for you. You can change the tolerance up here. So right now it's picking up on the similar like black dark tones, and all of those are connected. If I were to hold shift, which has a little plus sign next to it, you can add more to the selection like this. So I'm selecting all the dark grass. If you hold an alt, that will do the opposite and allow you to deselect. And if you change the tolerance up here, 50 is about average. Let's say I want to do 10. That gets me to a very small range of pixels. So as you can see, it only selected like some of that specific color block on that tree. And that won't even select the whole sky there, which to us might look like the same color, but it'll be very sensitive to pixel changes. You can go as high as, I believe, 200, and that basically selected everything white, everything gray, even a lot of this like dark gray in the water. It's not picking up on any of those different colors. So that's how the magic wand tool works. And we're actually going to do something with that. So let's say you wanted to, for some reason, color the sky. So we're going to turn off the hue and saturation layer so we can see the sky a little better. And then we're going to try to select it as best we can with the magic wand tool. Let's bring the tolerance up to 100. So we can put the sky on a separate layer. A little faster way to do this, if you want to select something that's pretty much the same color, but it's all, it's all woven between these tree branches, you can right click and go to similar. So that will select anything that has similar pixels. That did not work so well. So let's change our tolerance a bit on that and try that again. Okay, that worked a little better. I'm just going to take the rectangular tool and subtract some of this extra stuff that I got in there. So that's pretty much our sky. And now what we can do is we can make this a separate layer. So if you right click on this while you have a selection tool selected, you can click layer via cut or copy. I like to do cut, but either way, it's pretty much the same. If you do copy, it leaves this picture complete. But as you can see now, if I turn off this separate layer, which is the sky, it's transparent. So let's say you wanted to put another sky behind that. You could create a new layer and import a photo and drag it into this and hold the layer down to behind our original photo, and then it will show up behind. So for example, I just wanted my sky to be solid white, Right here, I clicked on the paint bucket tool, which is also Control G. And here's how you set the color for that. So we'll set it to, well, right now it's set to red. So we'll set that to white and click OK. And then you can just paint bucket the entire layer that you just made. And then your sky will be white. So if you ever need to make any sort of edits like that, or filter anything out, the magic wand and changing the layers is very helpful. And then of course we want to undo that. We turn that layer off, turn the sky layer that we cut out back on. And we could also, if you decide, okay, I don't want the sky to be separate, I want to put the photo back to where it was, you can hold down Shift, select both layers, right click, and then you can select merge layers. So I'm going to change the name because it takes the top layer's name, but now this is our original photo back to normal. All right, moving on here. Let's get to the image adjusting features. So we did mess with the hue and saturation a bit, but there are also other adjustments you can make that are similar to the ones that we were able to make in Lightroom. So you can make a brightness and contrast layer. Levels is also somewhat similar to that. So you can change the amount of black in your drawing, the amount of white in your drawing or photo, and also the midtones to make midtones darker or lighter. So that can be helpful there. And Lightroom actually has a similar function. Jumping back to this, if we're in the Basics tab, we can go to whites and blacks, and that will have pretty much the same effect. So going back to Photoshop, there's a lot of other image adjustment tools that are besides just the adjustment panel. So let's say, for example, this is my site photo, and I don't really like that there are people in here. And I want to take those people out because they're a little distracting. So you're going to take one of the selection tools, and I would use just the lasso tool, and just drag it around this man right here. It's a little tricky because the fence is there, so we're going to zoom in, hold and Shift to add to the selection, drag that around his legs, and let's get rid of this person's leg too. So after you have that selected, and this is on your original layer, you can go to Edit, and you see there's a lot of options here. Content Aware Fill is the one you're going to want to look for. So if you click this, it'll give you this preview dialog, and this will essentially use the surrounding pixels as a way to replace what you have selected and to make it blend in more. So this is the preview that it's giving me right now. You can see it's got a little bit of the of his legs still in there. It's like kind of adding some brown to that. So you can actually drag this sort of paintbrush option with the minus sign in it. That minus sign isn't automatically, you don't have to alt or anything. And that will get rid of the area that it's sampling from the pixels. And you can also do that with the lasso up here. And you can remove a lot of the brown from the area, so that will sample less from that. That didn't remove his leg though, so we don't want to do that. It will take less pixels from that and more from the grass, which we want it to blend into. Let's see how that looks. Here. Oof, it didn't work very well. Okay. Well, if Content Aware Fill doesn't work, you do have other options for making things blend in. So that would be the next tools on the list, skipping over the eyedropper. So that would be the spot healing brush and the healing brush, the regular healing brush tool. So if you use the spot healing brush, you can see now our content aware got kind of screwed up. So there's still some things we need to fix. So I just Control D to deselect that. And I'm going to make a new layer because I don't want to edit on the original. And now with the spot healing brush, you can go up to the top bar and you see I have sample all layers checked. So this will allow you to edit your photo by the combination of all the layers rather than by just the layer that the brush is being used on. So that way you can, let's say you want to hide this, you can put that blending to hide it on a separate layer in case you ever want to show it again. So if you click Alt, that'll give you this circle with an X through it. That will tell you what pixels the brush will be sampling from. So if you click, let's click somewhere here on the grass. So the spot healing brush is different, as you can see here. The spot healing brush will automatically sample the pixels, and the healing brush you have to click on a different spot. So let's go to the healing brush, hold Alt, and click. And then it will, let's try clicking over here now. It will smooth that right over and give you a nice even patch of grass there. You can also do that with this spot down here. The clone stamp right here, it's pretty similar, but it will put exactly those pixels into a different spot. So let's say, pull that out, and let's select this column just to show you. Then, it's on current layer. See, I messed up there. So you always have to check the top bar to make sure which layers you're editing. So right now, all of these healing brush clone tool edits are happening on layer 4 here, but they are still sampling pixels from all the layers below. So if I click Alt, sorry about that. I click Alt on this column here, it will copy the pixels from that column, and I can just stamp that essentially wherever I want. So you can also use that for edits, similar to the healing brush. It will smooth some things over, but we obviously don't want to put the column in the middle. So a lot of times the healing brush is the better option here. There we go. All right. So there's also the paintbrush tool, which I showed you a bit earlier, and the pencil tool. I don't find myself using these very often in architecture. A lot of times I will like select something and then fill it with a paint bucket, but there are certain brush packages that you can download. So I believe I have a watercolor package downloaded. So once you get into like, if you're making some sort of edits, if you're adding trees to anything, and this is a bit later on, you won't worry about this now, but mostly what I use the brush tool for is for like adding different effects like this. So you probably won't need that anytime soon, but still something cool to know. There you go. And I did that on my healing layer. So if I turn that off, you can see it goes away. So does the healing. So let's just undo that. My undo is being tricky today. It's not loading, so I'm just going to turn that off. Having a hard time loading. All right. So we're just going to keep going down the list. A lot of these, I don't find myself using a lot of these tools either for photo editing or anything like that. Then you have various shape tools here. The paint bucket, like I said, is a pretty common one that if you want to select something and move it to a different layer, you can also use that to fill it and change the opacity to like put a shade over something. So For example, I can do that with the water here. Let's use the magnetic lasso and make a new layer for that. Let's select the layer of the photo. So that's the layer it's going to take the pixels from. And I can bring it. Well, maybe not the magnetic lasso. Oh my goodness. Let's try the magic wand. And let's just say we'll deselect this. And I would be doing this a lot more neatly if this was a photo that I was actually editing. But for this purpose, I'm just going to roughly trace out the water. Okay. Then you can take the paintbrush and go to this blank layer we just made and fill with white. Turn the opacity down, let's say to like 20, and then it makes your water look a little whiter. Or if you want the water to look bluer, for example, you can always change that to blue. And then you give the water a blue tint. So that is typically what I would use the paint bucket for, something like that. I'm going to turn that layer off. All right, so that is the basics of editing photos in Photoshop. So next we're going to do a drawing, but first let me pause here and ask if there's any questions with that. I know that was a lot. We're all good? Okay, cool. So I'll try and make this quick because we have about 10 minutes. So we're going back to Lightroom here, and we'll go back to library mode and click this last picture for the drawing edit. Back to develop mode. And you don't really need to use both Lightroom and Photoshop, but this is just to show you like you can start in Lightroom, bring it back to Photoshop, and bring it back to Lightroom also. So you can do, let's say, whites and blacks. So this is a roof or house drawing that I did, which you will probably be seeing a lot of soon. So I'm just changing the whites right now, and you see that's already making the paper a lot brighter. This is a scan, so a lot of times scan comes out gray and they're not very great looking directly from the scan. So I have the whites turned up all the way to 100. I don't think you want that much because as you can see, it's kind of blurring out my guidelines, and I know Jamie likes to see those. So we're gonna bring it down a little bit more. It's okay if it's a little gray, we can edit that later. And the blacks you can also bring down to make your lines a little sharper. So already that's looking a little better than it was before. Paper's not so gray anymore, but there's still some edits that I think it could benefit from, such as these folds right here. We can blur those out and essentially smooth over them. So you can do that in Lightroom. I'm going to tools and spot removal. So Lightroom has the ability to do that similar to Photoshop. You can essentially smooth over, like the healing brush, it will automatically take the pixels around it and smooth all of that over. Just didn't do a very good job there though because of the pixels it sampled. So we're gonna undo that part. And let's say we want to bring this into Photoshop now to add some more filters to it. Just do a bit more precise spot removal. We can do photo edit in again, edit in Photoshop. And let's do edit a copy with adjustments. You can also, in Photoshop, just go to File and Open when it starts up to just directly bring a file into Photoshop. And Photoshop can take different files like JPEGs, PNGs, TIFFs, And then when you save a Photoshop file with layers, it will automatically save to a PSD or a PDF file. I'll get into that later once we save this one. So as you can see, it has a little edit that we made with spot removal, but I think we can do a little more with it. So I'm going to keep that locked actually. Oh. One moment. Here we go. Wow, the brain fart there. The lock tool is right there. Don't use that one too often. So we'll keep that layer locked. And we'll make a new layer. Sorry, duplicate this layer. So that will be the one that we'll work on. We'll just unlock that. And Lightroom will also have the original photo saved. So in this case, like we don't really need to do this, but it's a good practice to get in the habit of. If you're going to be saving a file with layers, it's always good to have the original on a layer. So let's say I wanted to get rid of these patches here. You could go to the healing brush right here. Make sure that the sample is on current and below or all layers. Typically, I think current and below is the most commonly used, because all layers will also do the layers above, which you might not always want. But that's up to whatever you are editing. You can also change the size of the brush up here. So you do this drop down. That makes our brush a little larger. Let's say we want to sample that. So I'm holding Alt right now and sampling this particular spot of paper. So you can spread over it like so, or what might be better for this situation is using the spot healing brush. You can make this a little larger, and that will automatically fill it in for you, so you don't have to pick the spot to sample. You can also see this is a lot easier than trying to select the pixels or like lighten the whole image. Or there's also like the blur tool or the dodge and burn tools, which are here. So those allow you to lighten and darken things. But as for editing photos, it's a lot easier to use the healing brush to smooth those kind of things out. And let's also say I don't like down here, I don't like how my flags are different sizes for my sections. So I'm going to take one, and I'm going to copy it. So I'm going to select this one. Actually, this one's a little nicer. Let's select this one. And I'm going to right click and do like we did before with the sky, do layer via cut. And then you can do Control T. That's another useful shortcut. That's the transform tool, which you can also get to in edit and transform. So this is going to allow you to basically move this one around. It acts as a move tool and as a transforming scaling tool. So if you hold Shift, you can make this larger. We don't want to do that, so I'm going to click Undo. And if you right click, you can see all the different options. So you can scale it by like a percentage or a number. You can rotate it. You can also mirror it. So I'm going to use flip vertical. Horizontal rather. Always get them mixed up. Promise I never get it right on my first try. And then you can just drag this over and cover up the other one with it. And thankfully A's are symmetrical, or I would have had to just copy the A over. If it's a B, you'd have to do that. But so yeah, now they're the same size and they aren't, awfully different from each other. If you're that picky about your drawings, you can choose to do that. And then that is also on its own layer. So if I decide, nah, I don't want to do that, I can just turn the layer off, and then it's fine. All right. Just quickly check. Okay, so I'm gonna open it up to some questions now before I save. Before I show you how to save. Was all that clear? Is there anything else you'd like to know how to do? Any kind of questions you have? There are no stupid questions, so don't be afraid. All right.
Is there a shortcut for adding a new layer?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Is there a keyboard shortcut for adding a new layer?
That's a great question.
Sure.
I only know a couple shortcuts, so usually I just click this down
Oh,
here.
okay. I didn't even realize that. My bad.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me see. Nope. Control L is levels. So that was my best shot.
Control Shift N.
Control Shift N. Wow. All right. You tell me something. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? All right. So this is already looking decent from our Lightroom edits, and I got rid of some of the print and folds up there. So I'm just going to say, you know what, this is good enough. You could add more adjustments and, you know, heal it as much as you want. But eventually, once you decide that this is good, you're going to go to File and Save As. So once you do this, this will take you to this menu. You can choose a lot of different file types from Photoshop. If you have layers and you want to keep those layers, you're going to want to save it as either a Photoshop document, which is PSD, or you can save it as a Photoshop PDF. A lot of the times I will save it as a Photoshop PDF because the file size is typically smaller. Make sure this layers button is checked. And this will bring you to another dialog. And it's important that if you're saving this because you want to keep the layers and you're okay with the file size being a little bigger, this is your primary photoshopping file. Keep the preserve Photoshop editing capabilities checked. If you have a separate PSD and you're just trying to basically export a PDF directly from Photoshop, you can uncheck that layers button and you can uncheck this and your file size will be a lot smaller. So that's just a tip. So we're just going to keep that checked because it's typically how I would save my Photoshop documents so that they're not quite so large as a PSD file. They're more compatible with things. Keep in mind if you do open up a Photoshop PDF in another Adobe program, it's not going to have those layers. So it's not going to be very editable unless it's back into Photoshop. Another thing you can do when you're saving, you can save as JPEGs. Right now it's in the settings, so I can't do that. We're going to go to this one. And we're going to do save as. And you can save it as a JPEG, you can save it as a PNG. They're not too much different. I'll typically use PNG in case there's some kind of transparencies going on, like in the background. That way it'll still be transparent when I save it. And I think James and Sean already kind of went over the difference between those. So I think you're all probably pretty good on those, but if you have any questions at the end, let me know. So that was how you would do a JPEG. You can also export as a JPEG or quick export as a PNG. So that's another option. I don't think they're very different. I think you can edit a bit more with export. You can determine like the quality and the size, that kind of thing. But for the most part, those options are pretty much the same. And then if you are working in Lightroom, as well as in Photoshop. Since we brought this picture into Lightroom, let's just say we want the water to be blue, just so we have a noticeable difference. And then we do File, Save. You can see now it added the suffix edit and it saved it as a TIFF. So that should come back up in Lightroom if we were to open that photo. Hopefully. Okay. It's not. But that's weird. Okay, well, I will have to get back to you on that one because that worked when I did it before. So, oh, maybe it's still saving. It's still saving. Wow. Okay, well, that's good. While those are saving, does anybody have any last questions? Because that pretty much sums up the lecture.
I have a question.
Sure.
So when you have a layer, let's say like if you went back to the one picture in Italy and you didn't want that layer with the S, so whatever has the I, that's what saves, right?
So all the layers save if you save it as a PDF or a Photoshop document, and you keep that layers button checked. They'll all save, but those will be turned off when you open it. It's however
Okay.
you left it. If you didn't want that layer, you could just click the trash can down here and delete it. If you save it as a JPEG, whichever layers are visible are the ones that are going to be shown. That helps. Any other questions? This should, yep, okay. Whew, I'm not going crazy. So this, if you click just save and you import it from Lightroom, it will add this suffix and it will switch over so that your updates are already in Lightroom. So that's just a cool feature if you're working back and forth between them. Okay. So, any other questions? It can also be unrelated to the presentation if you have something you want to do in Photoshop and you're not sure how. All right, we all good? Okay, cool. So yeah, if anybody has any follow-up questions that they didn't bring up today, feel free to email me. I can put my email in the chat. You could also email at the Beehive website. So I just search Beehive PSU, excuse me, and then click on the emails on the website. And I'll send mine in the chat. If anybody has any follow-up questions, that is my email. So yeah, just let me know. And I hope that was helpful. Hope I didn't keep you too long past your time. All right. That'll be it. You are all free to go. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday afternoon.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.